Hi guys, welcome to episode 7 of The Golden Kamuy, season 3. Today's episode, there was so much good stuff buried in it. We started on the Fields train. We actually ended up in the Fields train, then we went to some very interesting information, and then we went to the lands of the twists and the turns to kind of emerge at the end with me getting so hyped for episode 8. Really looking forward to it. It does seem like we're starting to set the stage for what I presume may occur to end out the season. I don't know, I really enjoyed the subtle links and then the not so subtle links made this episode. And I'm going to mention something right at the end because I'm starting to notice something, especially about this season in particular. So I'm going to mention it right at the end. This week's episode title was Meiko Oyase. Probably going to say it wrong. The open is essentially what got me really worried. I did actually start to worry whether we'd have a episode mainly surrounding this segment itself, and it didn't. This turns out just to kind of take up the first half. We go back to Team Sugimoto. I've missed my boy Sugimoto, haven't seen him in a while. The two teams are on two different sleds, so they're sledding through a very rough blizzard. To be fair, when I think Russia, I do think those awful winters. The anime does a very good job of trying to show the harshness and almost kind of the hopelessness of these winters with this first segment. The two teams, so we've got Team 1, which is Tsukisima, Kaito, we have Enanoka and Grant Henkei, I believe. That is Team 1. Those guys are on Team 1, where Team 2 is Sugimoto, Tanigaki, and Bona. Team 2 is literally my boys. I absolutely adore Sugimoto and Tanigaki, so that's my boys. And Team 2, sadly, is the one who actually gets it very rough this episode. I've kind of thought we were going to end up with the way that the first half goes. I thought that was going to be our main topic of the episode because I kind of worried that when we started to go into the flashbacks and the PTSD that we would probably go into another episode full of flashbacks, but we don't quite do that because there's a lot more second half that is very important that we need. This episode starts to move the plot forward more than anything else we've seen so far. The plot starts to move in this episode, and obviously we're starting to gear up with a joint end goal for both Team Sirapa and Team Sugimoto because we know they're both now heading in the same direction. Well, Team Sirapa already there. So we essentially see the two sledding, and we start to see Ryu, our loyal doggy. I do love him. He is a very good doggo. This Ryu starts to act very odd. He starts to pull away from the main crowd of other doggies. They end up pulling further and further apart because it's that kind of blizzard where you cannot see an inch in front of your face. It looks scary, cold looking, and it feels cold. No bright colours. The snow is constantly falling. Very ambient as well, and I really wouldn't want to be in that situation that the guys are in. Our smart Tsukisima firing off some gun shells as soon as he finds out that Team 2 is lost. Team 2 actually hears it. So Team 2 hears the gunshots, which makes them stop. When they fire back, Team 1 can't hear them firing back. So that kind of tells me that the wind, or the blizzard itself, is blowing towards Team 2. So it sends the noise from Team 1 to Team 2, fine, but these guys, Team 2, are firing into a blizzard. It's not going to carry. The sound will not reach them. So it gave me a little bit of information on what way the blizzard was blowing at that point. Both teams need to find shelter or they will die, which is where our opening credits roll. Team 2 are the ones which, again, I say are really worst off. They're the worst ones hit. And I did get a little bit emotional with these guys because it isn't very nice what these guys go through and the fact that it does trigger some PTSD, where Team 2 ends up by the coastline and they have to start digging a hole to try shelter them from the oncoming winds. I did initially wonder why they weren't huddling with the dogs. They do this later. It's better to probably share the body heat. They do this eventually. And they end up destroying the sled, where Tanigaki is going to be MVP for Team 2 this episode. He burns the sled under some piled up dirt instead. He realises that it won't last very long exposed to the elements, so he burns it and he puts the dirt on top of the fire, which he says will make us warmer for longer. So it will last just that bit longer, trying to extend your chances essentially, because these guys are pretty much facing death. They need to do all they can just to hold out that bit longer in hope that something will change, in hope that the winds might die down, something will happen. And I do like the fact that it turns into a Shiba Inu blanket for I want to be there, but I don't want to be there because it looks bad and I wouldn't want to be there. But I wouldn't mind being buried under some happy Shiba Inus. It would be great. We get Tanigaki handing Sugimoto some mochi. Sugimoto says, I've tasted this mochi before. My memory isn't too great. Obviously, I did blast through the first 2 seasons, but I know that this was mentioned, and I do briefly remember the flashbacks of Sugimoto because it's Sugimoto's promise where his friend ends up dying. And we do see him in the flashback. He does say, I've eaten this mochi before. I recognise it. But Tanigaki's just like, no, it's impossible because it's my own and I've changed the flavour. Which, again, we have seen already covered. This gets quite serious where he even warns him, you can't go to sleep or you're going to die. And it does give them both flashbacks of being in the trenches. And we've already seen some flashbacks already of those horrific frontline, those trench experiences. It is one of those more serious elements that this anime really does deal with, where we do see them in Sugimoto and I think it's Luigi, I believe that's his name. And they are in the trenches and they are cold. They're surrounded by snow and Sugimoto even says, it's cold. Which essentially I think was the thing he says as it took him into the flashback. And it reminds us of that Sugimoto promise that he made with the dead friend, and we see the friend dead. It does turn into a bit of a sequence which is portraying the horrors of war, and we get this quite a lot with quite a few of the characters who have been through the horrors of war, and they all have this PTSD where we get the sequence of him seeing countless dead around him, which obviously he's putting an end to whilst he's running, and we've seen quite a few sequences now like this. Characters do have in common is the fact that they've all had to kill somebody to save their own lives. We see a syruper reaching out for his shoulder, and this causes Sugimoto to start crying. I feel bad. I really do feel for Sugimoto, and I know I say it a lot, and he really is one of my favourite characters, as well as Tanigaki. I love both of them equally. It's just to see that she is the thing that he's thinking about, and he could probably die next minute he doesn't know that they're about to be saved. Kind of spurring him on, trying to keep him awake and alive. Let's now cut back to Team 1, because Team 1 don't have it as bad. They actually see a building ahead of them where they end up at a cattle farm lighthouse. Tanigaki is again recognised as the MVP, where even Tsukizuma's like, they've got Tanigaki with them, they will be okay. Tsukizuma is outside firing more and more shots. We do get a moment where Sugimoto says, I hear shots, thunder perhaps, and that again leads that PTSD of being back in the trenches because it's gunshots. Where we meet the man who lives at the farm, and thankfully he doesn't turn out to be a bad person. He is Russian and he is there and he is in charge of a lighthouse, which definitely is a saving grace here. There's no bad sign here. These guys have definitely got luck on their side. We go back to our boys in the dog fort. Sugimoto sees a light in the distance. That light turns out to be the lighthouse from where Team 1 is awaiting. We do flick back to a little light-hearted moment with Koito acting a bit like a crazed moth, where he's going crazy in front of the window trying to see if he can spot the guys coming through the snow. Where we get Tsukizuma going, don't walk in front of the lens, you're blocking the light, stop it. Koito writes something on the condensation in the glass, and I'm not quite sure. I don't know whether I've written it was backwards or not, but I think it spells crane. And I'm going to have to go for anybody from the manga here if you know what the hell that says or what that means. The teams finally reunite, and this really is luck on their side. Team 2 looks absolutely awful, and I don't know if I was going to use the picture of them all crammed together as my thumbnail, but they literally enter on Team 1, literally living the life of luxury. There is something called sushka. It looks like donuts. I just immediately saw it and I was like, I really want donuts. I haven't had donuts in ages. It probably isn't donuts, but I want donuts. And they're having it with tea. Then we see Koito simping his beloved leaky brain. I know there is a massive simp in the comments who hopefully I see your comment this time and it actually lets you post. There is a massive leaky brain simp in the who watches these videos. There you are. See, you're going to have to fight Koito for him. Koito says, I would love for him to try this. It's the extremes where you've seen Team 2 literally on the brinks of death walking into this. Team 2 are guided over to something called the Peshka. Peshka. That sounds more Russian. I am awful at Russian. As I said, I don't really have a great deal of experience with the language. I sound bad. I can't tell if my Japanese is equally as bad as my Russian or the Russian is way worse. I kind of feel they're both equally as bad. It looks like a half an oven. It's got a kind of a flat roof where obviously they even say the Russians would sleep there. I can imagine that's quite warm. I wouldn't mind being a cat curling up on that and just sleeping. And they do say you were very lucky. You would have died if these people were not here. And this lighthouse hasn't been used since the Russia-Japan war. And Tsukizuma really is still the MVP for the entire team, because that Russian is really coming in handy. And that's probably all part of Lieutenant Leaky Brain's kind of overarching plan, because obviously he was the one who suggested to Tsukizuma, you need to learn Russian. Coming in handy, dude. Yeah, that guy knows everything. Henkei, aka Gramps, is fixing up our sled, so we now know that the team can now finally move onwards. That's how I knew that we weren't going to be spending too much time with the guys, because I figured that a good cut-off point would be after them leaving. And that's when we learned that Rio really was just a good doggo, guys. He was pulling out of line because he wanted to stay with the other sled, but none of the other dogs would listen to him. Poor baby. And it's just the moment where Sugimoto is giving him some fuss like a good doggo deserves, and is like, you should be a sled dog too. And we just get that motivation within Ryu's eyes as he barks. Sugimoto is the king of pep talking for dogs. There has to be a funny moment. I'm so glad we get a little bit of a funny moment to lighten the mood, because it's been a very dark open where Koito gets his hand stuck to a hammer. Why would you touch metal, dude? Have you seen people lose their tongues? Where Tsukizuma says, someone needs to piss on this or he's going to lose his hand. Someone piss on it to melt it. And you just get Sugimoto being, I'll do it. It's like, give me your hand. He seems very, very excited to do it, and I'm like, oh no. These two have got a bit of a funny relationship between one another, where it's kind of like Koito hates Sugimoto, but Sugimoto kind of plays off it, and he starts chasing him kind of with his hands around his, and he's running away, and they're both running away into the wilderness. And I was like, they're running into the wilderness for privacy, so whatever happens in the wilderness stays in the wilderness, and we will never know what happened in the wilderness, guys. Where we now get something I can talk about. Sugimoto is eating borscht. Everybody's eating borscht. When I was in university, guys, I used to live in a house which was shared by students. We rented it ourselves. It wasn't student accommodation, but we rented a house. We used to take it in turns to cook. It was just three of us who were pretty close. We used to take turns in cooking. One of our students, who was not Russian, could only cook one dish. And there's a reason why I am not excited to see borscht. It's because during those 3 long years, all I got whenever it was his turn to cook was borscht. And borscht is just mainly beetroot, so you get a bit of cream on top, which is the white stuff you're seeing, or sour cream, I believe. I used to have to put a lot of salt in my borscht because I find it flavourless. Again, warm borscht is definitely what these guys need right now. It's probably very hearty. We learn the Russian for yummy. Here, guys, here we go. Everyone's now listening. Fokushna. And yeah, Bona is me, who really hashes up the pronunciation. Sorry, guys, I can't, like I said, I can't tell if my Russian is worse than my Japanese. I kind of feel like I'm passable at Japanese, whilst I am probably just awful, god awful when it comes to Russian. Fokushna. It probably is wrong. Probably wrong. I'm sorry to offend any Russian watchers if I have any. It's always been a country that I was never offered to study in history. I took history, and instead of studying Russia, which some of other classes did, I got stuck with, obviously, the Third Reich. I also studied the American West. Yeah, go figure. I would have loved to learn a little bit about Russia. The Russian family say they are very thankful for their guests, as they're often alone, but Sugimoto notices there's a picture of their daughter, where he says, where is your daughter? So obviously we've followed quite a few of the Japanese during this, but these are a Russian family who we see affected also by the war. And war does affect both sides. I always feel a little bit, I don't know, on edge and anxious when I have to discuss it. I'm almost glad that I didn't talk about the first 2 seasons. Though I don't want to talk about something that I don't fully understand properly, and I don't want to not do it justice, or I don't want to do it a disservice. We do get another side to the kind of the effects of it, where the Russian family essentially lived very peacefully with their daughter, watching over this lighthouse before the war. But then a Russian deserter appears, and they lived there for a bit, where they then took away their daughter, their only daughter, but they never found her again. And the military, the government did absolutely nothing, where when the Japanese finally landed, they were instructed by their government, blow up the lighthouse just so the Japanese can't use it. But they were so angry at their own government that they ended up handing it over to the Japanese. until another lighthouse was then built and their lighthouse had no more use for more. They wait there for their return, where Tsukamoto I do love Tsukamoto so much. I'm sorry, I keep kind of gushing over him, but he's just such a wholesome boy. He's like such a good bean. And Tsukamoto asks, can I take the picture of your daughter? And the daughter's name is Svetlana. I can say Svetlana because I know a girl called Svetlana. So there you go. That's the only one I can say. Moving on now, the family say, please find our daughter. And Tsukisimo kind of does give him a warning because obviously he's trying to warn Sugimoto to not make a promise he can't keep. Even Sugimoto's like, asking around won't take a lot of time out of what we need to do. We've already seen this guy in his photo collection. He can just, basically, he does love to whip out his photos. Episode 1, Sugimoto was just whipping them out all over the place. I then kind of felt like I had a bit of a fake out with the anime where Sugimoto gives them Asiripa's picture. Or it looks like he's given them Asiripa's picture. And he says, if she comes by, tell her I'm alive. And I was about to go, oh, they're trading their images of their most precious person to the other person. They've both given up these pictures to give to the other person. But then we cut to a picture of Sugimoto kind of making a creepy face. And I'm like, oh, so he didn't give her that picture? So it kind of felt like this amazing kind of speech I prepared about this little section was wrong. Cutting back to Sugimoto, asking Karafutu Ainu. I'm trying my best with the pronunciations. I'm going to basically be saying what I see on screen. I'm going to say it as it is on the screen. So if I do make any mistakes, I do apologise. Please remember, if I do make a mistake, especially like last week, not intentional. It really is not intentional. You guys are pretty forgiving with me when it comes to me making a few mistakes. Thank you so much. Accident, and it's not me intentionally trying to offend anybody. Trust me, that's the one thing I do not want to do. I cry when it comes to conflict, guys. I'm awful with handling conflict. I just cry in a corner. So we now get a roll credits moment where Enanoka tells Bona about a Mako Oyase. And she says there was a sighting and some villagers ended up kind of dropping all their stuff on the beach running off. And the Mako Oyase is a cat monster. I was about to go, oh, a cat monster. I bet that's cute. They are scary, but I still think they're kind of cute. They've got these really cute little tufts on their ears, which maybe go, that's a mountain cat, that's a wild cat. See, up in Scotland, we get wild cats. Hopefully I've got a picture of a wild cat from Scotland up on the screen. Such a pretty cat. I love them. They are so gorgeous. Koito then spins the episode back to something that we've been following this entire season. Keeps coming back to this one name, and we've had a lot of focus on this one character. Koito says, are you sure it wasn't Ogata? He then says, a child of a mountain cat is a mountain cat, which initially doesn't make any sense to the guys around, because even Sugimoto's like, that makes no sense, what does that mean? Mountain cat, or Mako Oyase, is a slang for a geisha, and we know that Ogata's mum is a geisha. He says that it was a dumb joke they used to tell in a division, so we can definitely guarantee Ogata's heard this joke, and I can imagine he's not overly impressed with this joke. Where Koito then continues, given his personality, a lot of men didn't like him, and he even goes as far as to go, I hate him, where I've kind of gone off and gone, what could it be? Could it be the possible silent, emotionless face of his? Those weird eyebrows? Could it be the headshot accuracy and how scary this man is when he can hit a target from a mile off? Is it the fact that his voice actor, Kenjiro Suda, is hot? No, wait. How did that get in my script? The cold aura that he gives off. Terrifying, right? And it turns out that Mountain Cat also means to con or deceive somebody, which is perfect for Ogata. This next section made me feel feelings, and I can't quite explain my feelings here, where it's Sugimoto's face. He doesn't say anything, he's very silent, but obviously as Koito starts to talk about Ogata, and we know that the betrayal of season 2 was just shocking. I didn't watch it when you guys watched it when it aired. I can imagine that must have just been awful to end on, that initial betrayal of Ogata and the groups moving across and separating. That must have been one hell of a end to that anime season whenever it aired. That betrayal of season 2 has left a mark that is never going to fade, a scar on Sugimoto that will never fade. Yes, his brain is starting to leak out and he's trying to copy Leaky Brain, but also at the fact that it has affected him and he's lost a Suripper. We cut back quickly to the rest of the story by Enanoka, where the cat basically apparently ate the belongings that were dropped on the beach. Apart from the tobacco, it didn't touch that because it's stinky. which I thought was just a bit weird. I was like, okay, this is a story that they're telling. It must be kind of like a cautionary tale that people would tell their kids. But it does have a bit more of a meaning in the next sequence, which I found odd. We end with Koito saying probably the most standout line, and it's best to kill a thieving cat. And it's just a close-up on Sugimoto, which made me feel something. And I don't know if I wanted to cry. I felt sad for him. I do feel sad for Sugimoto. I feel he must be... I don't know if he's conflicted. I think he must be conflicted. Is just as mysterious as Ogata himself, the Ogata betrayal. Whether Sugimoto is gonna just, next time he sees him, straight up try killing Ogata, I don't think he'd stand a chance anyway. That's something which is very high on my list next to seeing Sugimoto and Asirapa reunite. That's a reunion I definitely am very anxious to see. That is Sugimoto and Ogata. We then transition to Ogata, and he turns around as if he knows he's been trash-talked by Koito. And we can see that Team Sirapa has found some paw prints. And to link it all back, link it to the title, make it relevant. But she's like, oh no, it's too big. Where the conversation starts all up again, where Shiraishi asks, what is a Mako? And Asirapa says, it is a cat. It also means those who die in cold. Just how smart this anime is. Wonder if that's going to mean anything down the line. It feels ominous. You know when something just stands out as ominous. That feels ominous. Kiro says that these are the paw prints of a mountain cat. There's your link straight away. We've had the story with Team Sugimoto, and now we're facing it with Team Asirapa, where Asirapa says once, Wilk told me about a Mako Oyase, and it is the same rumour that we hear Inonoka saying, that we get a flashback with young Asirapa and Wilk, and it's the same story. The clothes go missing, they're eaten, and it doesn't touch the tobacco as well. It is the same story, and obviously there is that Karafuto link with Wilk. It's just great to see it all starting to link together. Because it did initially sound like a very random story when Sugimoto is learning about it. Here, it makes sense. Here, we get that link. It is amazingly linked together. We learn that Kiro and Wilk hunted a mountain cat once, where they made a profit of its pelt. The first thing Asirapa wants to know, what did it taste like? The most important thing. But the verdict, not very good, very gamey. But Wilk hated it because of that. I'm not a fan on game. The most kind of like crazy I've got is I've had boar. Kiro then says, do you want to know more? And it's just, Kiro, you sly. I don't like Kiro. Everyone hates on me for kind of not hating Ogata, but I hate Kiro just because there's something about Kiro that makes me want to hate him instead of hating Ogata, when it probably should be the other way around, but it's not. Kiro then name drops probably the woman in the next episode, because I think it is going to be about her next episode. A woman named Sophia who knew Wilk. We are so misled on this. We get a image of a very beautiful maiden with gorgeous blue eyes and like nice, really gorgeous hair, where he says she's brave, educated, very beautiful, and Kiro admires her. And Asirapa says, I want to meet her. Where is she? I knew immediately where she was. I can see right through your plans, Kiro. I know what you're doing. You're evil. It's the prison. It is the prison we've already heard name dropped. It's that huge prison that Team Sugimoto learnt about, and they obviously were planning to eventually get there. And the nickname, thankfully, it's got a nickname. I can call it this nickname. It's Akko Prison. I cannot pronounce the full name. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to try. We know a little bit of information that this prison holds 1,700 prisoners. The male prisoners have half their hairs cut off. It is a place that uses labour, essentially heavy labour, that will be put to work. And it also uses quite physical punishments, where we see a sequence of somebody getting whipped for trying to run away. We're going to go quickly back to a map. So we do get to see a map. And obviously we've seen a few maps now of how far behind Team Sugimoto really are. Team Asirapa are very close to where the prison is held, but we already know that Team Sugimoto is 140 miles from the border. That's not including how far after it is to the prison, so they are very far behind. Where the prisoner being whipped turns out to be Sophia. Didn't expect her to now look like this. Age did not treat you well, I'm afraid. And again, she must be quite old now. I don't know how old Wilk was, but if she knows those guys, she must. And they consider her a teacher. She must be quite old. She committed many, many crimes to fund all the activities, so much so that she gained the name Golden Hand. Sophia knows things about Wilk that even Kiro does not know, so obviously we know where we're heading next. Our next location, definitely Eiko Prison. Let's cut to something a bit interesting, where Ogata is staring at a mountain cat. It's just the way that he's staring at it, and I'm like, is it reminding you of your mother? I mean, obviously you must have heard that joke that people were saying, and you know that the link with the name and the geisha. I was about 70% that he might not even shoot. But then he does actually go to try shifting the gun off his shoulder. But it's Asirapa who calls out to him. She clearly can see the direction he's looking in. And obviously she doesn't see what he's seeing. And he turns around to her. And then he turns back and the cat is gone. There is no cat anymore. So it does make me question, did you see that? Did you actually see what I think you saw? Because Asirapa didn't react. And it's just that linger. Oh, whenever the end violin part starts to play, the cellos start to play, the strings start to play of the ED, I get so excited. I get so hyped. I do love that ED so much. And it starts to play and he's lingering and then he turns around and that's his end shot. It was the close-up of him turning away. And then it cuts to his footsteps in the snow, mingling with these paw prints of the mountain cat. And they're both heading in the same direction. It's just such beautiful symbolism that Ogata's footsteps are mingling with this mountain cat, and we know that the mountain cat is obviously sometimes likened for a geisha. It's almost like footsteps are mingling with his mother's, like almost they're entwined together. Kaito himself even says the mountain cat child is still a mountain cat. So it's that almost symbolism again, seeing that those tracks are intrinsically connected to his own footsteps. I just love it so much. I love that bit of symbolism. That might have been my favourite bit of symbolism. I can't explain it. I just really do like stuff like that. End sequence! Just to kind of kick us again with another oh my god WTF moment. Sophia is telling another female inmate that she can leave if she gets married. And then she's like, you're young, Svetlana. Find a man and get married. It is Svetlana, and who would have thought that Svetlana would lead them to the same place, and everybody's paths are definitely gearing up to be at the final stage of the Eiko prison for this season. A possibility as well that last season we ended with the prison sequence and Wilk kind of dying. That was our end to season 2. Is this end of season 3 going to be a showdown again at Eiko prison? Very, very interesting stuff. It's all starting to gear up, guys. I'm getting very excited. We see a letter pushed through the door, addressed to Svetlana, but it's Sophia who reads it, which I have questions. I've got theories, which are probably going to be wrong, because obviously I don't have enough information, or I'm not wholly like you guys. I haven't read the material, the manga behind it. I do have theories, though. I have some theories. Sophia holds it to the light where we see it's written in invisible ink, Yolbars, aka Kiro. And she even says, "You've come back, kid." Which cuts to a picture of Kiro overlooking the town and the prison. So they're there. They're already in the right place. They're right by the prison. I did have to say, why is it addressed to Svetlana? Does Kiro know Svetlana? I have questions, guys. I have got so many questions. It's all getting very exciting. Next week's episode is Manslayer. This week's episode, it was a feels train. It really was. The first half with Team Sugimoto and those guys going through some PTSD, that hit me in the feels. I did feel really sad. And learning the story about the family and Svetlana and their experiences during the war, that did get me quite sad. I felt quite down and quite almost emotional during that first half. Then we kick off and then we start to get the very interesting links with Ogata. And what I was going to say right at the start is I almost feel like the entire season 3 that we've seen so far, the most important character that we seem to be talking about a lot is Ogata. And yes, he is a very interesting character, and a lot of people do seem to hate the guy. And fair enough to you, fair enough. I mean, face value, he does shoot and betray Sugimoto and Asirapa. It does make me wonder if he is going to be a very key player later down the line, and if Ogata has so much more information about him. As I said, I am absolutely fascinated with his character. I think he's fascinating. I think he's very interesting. Whenever I see him on screen, I am always excited to see what's going to happen next. What's he going to do? What are we going to learn? And we are learning so much about the character Very, very fascinating character. There does seem to be a bit of a theme this season with our animes currently airing. There's a lot of characters we seem to be following who we can call them characters who are morally grey, morally bad. We're following characters who are troubled, who are definitely someone you couldn't consider good. Hopefully you can kind of, with my emphasis, you can feel the air quotes. We definitely seem to be following very interesting characters. If you guys don't know, I am also reviewing Moriarty the Patriot, which follows Moriarty, who kills people, who is a very interesting character. You can't call him good, but he's the main character, and we've got some very interesting characters. We are also got things like Jujutsu Kaisen airing this season, where Schooner isn't exactly what you'd call good, and we are still following him because he is intrinsically connected to our main character. There does seem to be quite a exciting hype around these kind of darker characters, and very, very excited, and I cannot wait to see what's going to happen. I'm just so excited. I'm going to be very sad when I have to wait, like the rest of you guys, for whenever season 4 gets announced and airs. And thank you so much. Make sure you guys head over to the Discord channel. Yes, I have one. The perks of being on my Discord channel, you literally get a notification sent to your phone or your computer that I have literally posted any video on my YouTube channel. You will get a link to that video. You will get to see the title, what video it is. You literally get kept in the loop. So please come across. I do think it's very handy, as you guys can also ask me questions, talk to me a bit whenever I'm around. I am in and out. I will be using that as a platform to build from a little bit later on as we get bigger. We did hit 200, so I'm so happy with my 200 subs. I love all of you guys, and I really hope that I can impress you guys and keep you guys entertained as we break down animes, and no matter whatever the animes are. Also, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, either both of them if possible. I will be releasing at some point and picking my next anime season animes just to see what I am going to be reviewing next season. Very excited, cannot wait to announce what I choose to pick. Give the video an up like if you enjoyed or just kind of found it fascinating like me, or you're just simply like me, hyped for the next episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Have a good one. Bye bye.